Most people didn't even see her, not really. They ordered coffee, they left their trays, but no one ever looked her in the eye, until one rainy morning, someone did. Maya Ellis moved through the hospital like a quiet breeze. She wore plain white sneakers and a name tag no one ever read. Her hair was tied back, her voice barely above a whisper. At 25, she worked in the cafeteria at St. Augustine Memorial, and no one really knew her beyond that. She showed up before the city woke up. Rolled silverware, brewed coffee, cleaned up after strangers who treated trays better than they treated people. But Maya noticed everything. The nurse who always stayed late just to hold an old man's hand. The security guard who brought extra crackers for the kid in oncology. Even the way the hallways smelled different on rainy days, like damp paper and lemon disinfectant. She had a way of remembering people. Faces, little habits, even the ones who never once remembered her name. She didn't mind. Not really. She had grown up in places where being invisible kept you safe. Foster homes, group shelters, a rotating door of strangers and rules. Evergreen Children's Home was the last place she stayed long enough to leave a mark. That was the year she learned how to fold her sadness into something quiet. The year she started noticing everything and saying almost nothing. And maybe that's why he caught her attention. It was a Thursday. Rain tapped the cafeteria windows like it wanted to be let in. Maya was refilling the coffee station when she spotted him. Tall, damp at the shoulders, sitting alone in the back corner. He wasn't scrolling his phone, wasn't talking to anyone, just sitting there, holding a cup with both hands like he was afraid it might slip away. Something about him made her pause. Not his face exactly, but the feeling it gave her, like a melody she half remembered but couldn't place. He didn't look her way, didn't even seem to notice she was there. But Maya, she couldn't stop looking, because something about him felt like a memory, not from yesterday, but from a time she thought she'd buried. He came back the next day. Same time, same table, still alone. This time Maya didn't just glance at him, she watched. Not in a way that begged attention, but with quiet curiosity, the kind that came from someone who had spent most of her life in the background. He wasn't like the other doctors. They usually moved with a kind of rush, always checking their phones or scanning the room like it owed them something. But this man, he sat still, like he was trying to remember what silence sounded like. Maya found herself bringing him coffee before he even asked. She placed it gently on his table. Black, no sugar, right? He looked up. His eyes met hers, just for a second. A flicker of surprise, a polite smile, a quiet "thank you." And then he looked away. But that one glance, it stayed with her. Because those eyes, they weren't unfamiliar. They carried something she'd seen before. Not here, not in this life, but somewhere back where things were smaller, harder and quieter. She went about her shift like usual, but her thoughts drifted. That night, at home, she opened the old shoebox she hadn't touched in years. Inside were pieces of a childhood she rarely revisited. A plastic bracelet from a fair she barely remembered, a faded drawing of a sun and two birds, and a photograph. In the photo, a little girl with wild curls sat beside a boy with serious eyes. Both were maybe 9 or 10. They were on the steps of Evergreen Children's Home, legs dangling, wearing oversized hand-me-downs and shoes that didn't quite fit. She brought the photo closer. That boy, that same look in his eyes. Maya's heart thudded once, not out of fear but recognition. It couldn't be, could it? She stared at the picture until the room felt smaller. Until the edges of her memory started pressing inward, daring her to believe what she already felt in her bones. The man in the hospital. He was the boy from Evergreen. Maya didn't sleep much that night. She kept the photo on her nightstand and glanced at it every time she turned in bed. The more she looked at it, the more sure she became. It was him, the boy from the steps of Evergreen, the one who barely spoke, who used to line up his food before eating, the one she once sat next to during a thunderstorm just so he wouldn't be alone. But now he had a new name, a new life, a title in front of it all. Dr. Caleb Foster. She wanted to be sure before doing anything, before saying something she couldn't take back. So the next day, she brought the photo with her, tucked deep inside her bag. For most of her shift, she stayed quiet, thoughtful, careful, watching him from a distance like she always did. And when her hands started to shake just a little too much, she knew she couldn't keep it inside any longer. There was only one person she trusted enough to ask. Erin, a nurse on the second floor. Erin had one of those faces that made people feel safe. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays without writing them down, who noticed when someone looked tired and brought an extra coffee without asking. During a slow moment near the back hall, Maya found her restocking gloves. "Hey, Erin," she said softly. Erin turned, smiling. "Hey, Maya, you okay?" Maya hesitated, then pulled the photo from her apron pocket, holding it like something fragile. I think I knew someone a long time ago, and I think he works here now." Erin tilted her head, then took the photo and studied it. "That's you?" she asked gently. Maya nodded. Erin looked closer. "That boy, he looks like Caleb." Maya's breath caught. "You think so?" Erin gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "Yeah, he doesn't talk about his past much, but I do know he was adopted. Foster system. Said he lived in a group home until he was 12. Maya's voice dropped. "Evergreen?" Erin looked up, surprised. "Yeah, that was the name." Maya's hands tightened around the strap of her bag, so she wasn't imagining it. It really was him. Maya sat alone on her break that afternoon, legs curled beneath her on the bench just outside the staff entrance. The wind was soft, but she barely felt it. She kept the photo in her lap, fingers resting on the edges like she was afraid it might vanish. It was him. Everything pointed to that. The timing, the age, the face. But now came the question that made her chest feel heavy. What if he didn't remember her? What if she was just a blurry piece of a childhood he'd packed away long ago? Like an old shoebox in the back of someone else's closet. She thought about the boy he used to be, how quiet he was, how careful. She'd only spoken to him a few times. But she remembered his eyes, how they flinched at loud voices, how they softened when she handed him that crumpled drawing. The one with the sun, the birds, and 3 shaky words at the bottom. "Stay, just for today." She didn't know why she'd written that. She was 9, maybe 10, and everything back then felt uncertain, like life could fall apart on any given Tuesday. But she remembered sitting next to him that night while the others slept, just listening to the rain. And for some reason, that moment stayed with her. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was quiet and real and hers. Now she wondered, was it his too? Did he carry that memory the way she did? Or had life moved too fast, too far, and left that moment behind? She heard the door behind her open. Footsteps, voices, the everyday rhythm of the hospital. But she stayed still, because the truth was, she didn't need him to remember to make it real. She remembered, and maybe that was enough. Still, a small part of her couldn't help but hope he did. The change came quietly. No announcement, no reason given. One morning, Maya checked the new cafeteria schedule and noticed something different. Her name was no longer in the 5 a.m. slot. Instead, her shift started later, after sunrise, when the air wasn't so cold and the city didn't feel so lonely. She blinked at the board for a few seconds, unsure what to make of it. It wasn't like Mr. Reynolds to change schedules without a reason, especially not for someone like her. When she asked about it, he barely looked up from his clipboard. "Admin reshuffle," he said. "Just follow what's posted." Then he walked off, muttering about supply orders. Maya didn't push. She never did. But something about it felt intentional. 2 weeks later, her paycheck arrived, and she paused again. It was higher. Not by a lot, but enough to make her blink. She stared at the numbers, heart suddenly light and uncertain. She double-checked the hours. Everything matched. When she went to the HR office to ask if there'd been a mistake, the woman behind the desk gave a smile and said, "No mistake. Looks like a pay adjustment was approved." "By who?" The woman glanced at her screen. "Senior admin, it just says authorised." Maya walked out holding the check like it was made of glass. She didn't know who approved it. No one said anything, no one claimed credit. But as she walked past the east hallway, the one that looked out over the city skyline, she saw him again, Dr. Caleb Foster. He stood talking with a resident, calm and focused, his hands in the pockets of his white coat. He didn't see her, or if he did, he didn't show it. But she noticed something in the way he glanced toward the cafeteria door. Just a flicker. Just enough to wonder. Was it him? She didn't know. And maybe she never would. But for the first time in a long time, the weight on her shoulders felt just a little lighter. And that was enough, for now. At first it was just a feeling. The way conversations seemed to pause when Maya walked into the room. The glances, quick, sideways, followed by polite smiles that didn't quite reach the eyes. She told herself she was imagining it, but then came the comments. "Must be nice," someone muttered near the break table. "Some people get a raise without even asking." Another voice, lower, half joking, half not, added, "Maybe she's got friends in high places." Maya kept her head down and stayed quiet. She'd always known how to disappear when she needed to. old habits from foster homes that taught her silence was safer than defense. Still, the words landed heavier than she wanted to admit. She hadn't asked for special treatment. She hadn't done anything but her job, the same way she'd always done it. But kindness, when it shows up where people don't expect it, tends to make them uncomfortable. And it wasn't long before Mr. Reynolds called her into the back office. She walked in with her hands tucked in her apron, heart steady but cautious. He didn't look up from his desk right away, just shuffled a few papers, then leaned back with a sigh. "I don't know what's going on," he said, "but things are changing around here, and I don't like surprises." Maya stood still, waiting. "I've been getting questions about you, about your schedule, your pay bump, and now people are starting to talk." She stayed quiet, unsure what he wanted from her. He looked up, eyes sharper now. "I don't care who's helping you, if anyone is, but don't let it go to your head. You work here like everyone else, understood?" Maya nodded slowly. "I never asked for any of it." "Good," he said, already turning back to his papers. "Then keep your head down, and don't give people reasons to ask more questions." She walked out with her chest tight. Not angry, just tired. Because no matter how far she came, it still felt like she had to prove she belonged. But as she passed the east hallway again, she glanced toward the window. And for a moment she saw Caleb standing there sipping coffee. He didn't say anything, didn't wave. But he saw her, and he nodded, just once. It was small, subtle, but somehow it was enough to keep her going. No one expected him to speak that day. It was just a routine staff meeting. Quarterly updates, a slideshow, a few half-hearted claps. Maya only went because Erin nudged her in the hallway and whispered, "Trust me, you'll want to hear this one." So she stood in the back of the room, behind rows of doctors and nurses, holding a paper cup of water that had already gone warm. And then Caleb walked up to the mic. He didn't bring notes, didn't adjust his tie. He just stood there, still for a moment, as if choosing whether to speak or stay silent. When he finally did speak, his voice was low but steady. "I want to share something personal," he said. "Not because I like talking about myself, but because I think some things are worth remembering out loud." The room grew quiet. "I grew up in the foster system. My name used to be different. My life used to be different. And for a long time, I tried to forget it. Because that's what people expect you to do once you get out." He paused, glancing at the floor for a second before continuing. "There was one night when I was 12 that I still think about. I had just found out I wasn't going back home, and I felt done trying, done hoping. I didn't want to wake up the next morning." Maya's breath caught. "But someone sat next to me that night," Caleb said, his voice softer now. "She didn't say anything profound. She didn't fix anything. She just handed me a drawing, a sun, 2 birds, and 3 simple words." He closed his eyes just briefly. "Stay just for today." The silence in the room stretched. Not awkward, not empty, but full of something everyone could feel. I never saw her again. I don't think she knew how much that moment mattered to me, but it did. It still does. His eyes scanned the crowd. "And a few months ago, I saw her again." Heads turned, whispers started. Caleb took a quiet breath. "She works in this hospital. She shows up early, stays late, remembers faces even when no one remembers hers." Maya felt like the ground shifted beneath her. Her heart thudded so loud, she wondered if anyone else could hear it. "I want to say thank you," he said, "and I want the rest of you to know her name." He looked toward the back of the room. "Maya Ellis." Gasps, then silence again. Maya froze. She didn't know what to do, whether to run or stay, but her feet stayed planted. Caleb smiled, just barely. "Because of her, we're launching something new, a mentorship and scholarship initiative for teens aging out of foster care. We're calling it Maya's Table, because it started with a meal, and a moment, and a kind kid who didn't know how much she was saving someone." The applause started slow, then louder, then standing. But Maya barely heard it, because for the first time in her life, someone had told her story, and the whole room listened. For a while she couldn't move. Even after the clapping stopped, after the chairs squeaked and the hallway filled with chatter, Maya stood there, pressed against the back wall, like her feet had grown roots. She wasn't sure what she felt. Seen, exposed, safe? Maybe all of it, maybe something more complicated than words. Erin found her before anyone else did, wrapped her arms around her like a sister would. "I told you to come," she whispered into Maya's ear, smiling through tears. "I knew it was you." Maya laughed, but it came out shaky. "I don't know what just happened." "You happened," Erin said, "and it's about time someone noticed." The next day, the cafeteria felt different. People greeted her by name. Doctors she'd only passed in elevators smiled and said hello. One nurse even stopped her to ask if she was the real Maya from the meeting, like she'd somehow become a story people wanted to carry. It was surreal, unsettling even. But the most unexpected moment came that afternoon, near the back exit, where deliveries were made and few people lingered. Mr. Reynolds stood by the loading dock, hands stuffed in his jacket pockets. When Maya walked past, he cleared his throat. "Hey," he said. She turned. "Hi." He looked down, then back up, his mouth tightening before he spoke. "I owe you an apology." Maya didn't say anything, just waited. "I misjudged you," he said, "made assumptions I had no business making. I was wrong." His voice was quieter than usual, realer. "You're not what I thought," he added, "and that's on me." Maya stared at him for a second, then nodded slowly. "Thank you." He gave a small, respectful nod. Nothing dramatic, no grand gesture. But it was enough. Sometimes apologies don't come with speeches. Sometimes they're just a moment of someone finally seeing you without the noise. And in that moment, Maya realised something. She had spent so much of her life trying to be small, trying not to take up space. But maybe now, she didn't have to do that anymore. Maybe now she could grow into the kind of person who believed she belonged, even when the room was full, even when the spotlight felt too bright. And maybe this was just the beginning. A few days after the staff meeting, Maya was called upstairs. She'd never been to that part of the hospital before, the admin floor. The walls were quieter there, the floors shinier. Everything smelled like fresh paper and polished wood. She almost turned around twice before reaching the office. But when she walked in, Caleb was already standing, waiting with that calm expression he always wore, like nothing could shake him. "Thanks for coming," he said gently. Maya gave a small nod, her voice still unsure. "You didn't have to do any of that." "I know," he said, "but I wanted to, and I meant every word." He gestured toward the small table in the corner, where two chairs sat across from each other. No desk, no titles, just a place to talk. She sat down, heart still tapping at her ribs like it hadn't figured out this was real. "I have a question for you," Caleb said, sitting across from her. Maya raised an eyebrow. "I want you to help build this," he said. "The program, the mentorships, the internships. You'd work directly with us, guiding kids who are aging out of the system." She blinked. "You mean like a coordinator?" He smiled. "Something like that, but more than a title. You'd be the heart of it." Maya looked down at her hands, still calloused from years of lifting trays and scrubbing counters. "I've never run anything before." "You've lived it," Caleb said simply. "That's more valuable than any resume." She let the words sit for a moment. In her head, she heard all the voices from her past. The ones that said she wasn't enough, not smart enough, not polished enough. But now, for the first time, another voice was louder. Her own. Maybe she didn't have a college degree. Maybe she didn't know how to run meetings or design programs. But she knew how it felt to be left behind. She knew how one small moment of kindness could change everything. And maybe that was the point. "I'll do it," she said quietly. Caleb smiled. "Good, I was hoping you'd say that." They sat for another moment, letting the quiet speak for them. And when Maya finally stood up to leave, she realised something. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just showing up. She was stepping into something, and this time the seat at the table was hers. 6 months passed like a quiet exhale. Maya still walked the halls of the hospital, but now people didn't look past her. They looked for her. She wasn't wearing an apron anymore, no more hairnet, no more back shifts. Instead, she carried a worn leather notebook tucked under her arm, filled with ideas and names and plans that hadn't existed before she said yes. The Maya's Table initiative had started small, just a pilot program, a few young adults from group homes shadowing nurses and support staff, but already it was growing. And somehow so was Maya. She still had moments where she questioned herself, still caught her reflection sometimes and wondered how she'd gotten here. But now, when those doubts crept in, something steadier spoke underneath them. "You belong here, you earned this, you matter." No. One Friday afternoon she visited one of the partner group homes. Just a small place, pale yellow siding, a front porch that creaked when you stepped on it. Nothing fancy, but it smelled like clean sheets and spaghetti, and that was something. She was there to meet a new girl who had just signed up for the program. 12 years old, big eyes, quiet. Sat on the porch steps, hugging her knees to her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. Maya sat beside her, not too close. She didn't say much at first, just listened, After a few minutes, she pulled a small drawing from her notebook, one she kept folded between the pages, creased from time and handling. It was a sun, 2 birds, and 3 words at the bottom. Stay, just for today. The girl looked at it, then looked up at Maya. Did you draw this? Maya smiled softly. A long time ago, for someone who needed it, and now it's yours. The girl didn't say anything right away, but she unfolded the paper again, smoothed it out carefully, and tucked it into her pocket like it was something important. And maybe it was, because sometimes that's all it takes. Not a grand gesture, not a miracle. Just one moment, one drawing, one stranger sitting beside you when the world feels too heavy. As they sat there, the wind brushed gently across the porch, the creak of the swing behind them, the sun slipping through the clouds like it had nowhere else to be. And Maya knew, truly knew, that what she had once given in silence had come all the way back. Not to reward her, but to be passed on. Maya didn't do anything dramatic. She was just kind, quietly, at the right moment. And I think in some way we've all been a little like Maya, moving through life quietly, doing good without needing credit. Or maybe we've all been the one who needed a Maya, someone to sit beside us on a heavy day and simply say, stay, just for today. This story isn't just about her, it's about all of us. About the little things we think no one notices, but somehow they end up changing everything. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I really mean that. And hey, do you like hearing this story in a female voice? Or would you rather hear it from a male voice next time? Leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to hear what you think. And if this story touched something in you, even just a little, I'd be so grateful if you subscribe to the channel. I'll see you again soon, right here on Rain Inside.